Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Zoom DUI Expungement Kickoff webinar. Everyone at Safe and Just Michigan is thrilled you're participating. We've muted your microphones to ensure that everyone can hear the panel, but please ask any questions you have using the chat function on Zoom. You'll find the chat function on the taskbar when you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen. For anyone who has not used Zoom before, the chat button is the one that looks like a talk balloon. At the end of the panel, we will gather up and answer questions for as long as time allows. We'll be putting links to an exit survey and ways to get in contact with us on the screen at the end of the panel discussion, but you will also be able to find those links during the event in the chat room. For those of you who want to revisit this discussion, we are streaming this event on the Safe and Just Michigan Facebook page, and it will be put up on the Safe and Just Michigan YouTube channel later. You can also engage with us on our social media channels or visit our website. Today's webinar is designed to celebrate the entry into force of Michigan's first-time OWI expungements. We are expecting to open the webinar with Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, but as sometimes happens, he had to cancel, probably due to important issues of state. First up is Safe and Just Michigan's Executive Director, John Cooper, who will be talking about the importance of this legislation and what it will mean for Michigan. John joined Safe and Just Michigan in 2017 as Policy Director after serving as a Criminal Justice Policy Advisor to State Representative David LeGrand. Before he joined Representative LeGrand's office, Mr. Cooper spent 7 years as a litigator in Washington, D.C. John?
Thanks, Josh, and thanks to everyone who's joined us today. I'm going to be fairly brief. We've got a couple great speakers coming up, including Representative Yancey, who just joined us here. But just to kick it off, we like to get together to acknowledge important reforms when they pass and go into an effect, and we're glad you can join us for this today. I think it's important to say at the outset that this isn't about drunk driving. It's about giving second chances to people who have shown through their subsequent conduct that an old DUI conviction was an isolated mistake. You know, there's no question in my mind that DUIs are a major public safety concern and should be illegal, but one can both believe that and also believe that an old DUI shouldn't hang over a person's head forever. But until this past Saturday, when this legislation went into effect, no DUI, no matter how old, was eligible for expungement in Michigan. So every DUI, in effect, was a matter of permanent public record. Not anymore. And this is a big deal, I think, for several reasons. First, the number of people affected. There's over 33,000 DUIs annually in Michigan, and it's, I think, the most common reason for admission to jail statewide. And an estimated 200,000 people benefit from this legislation, potentially. Second, these are convictions that have serious consequences. DUIs have significant long-term impacts on a person's access to employment, particularly if it requires a driver's license, and housing access, as well as the ability to drive in their personal life. We've actually gotten a number of calls from people with 20-year-old DUI convictions who have stayed out of trouble but can't get their driver's licenses back. Finally, DUIs, it's one of the areas of our criminal law that's been defined by get tough policies and rhetoric that doesn't leave room for rehabilitation or second chances. And opening up expungement eligibility to first offense DUIs acknowledges that people can and do change and deserve second chances. This is an insight that we at Safe and Just Michigan believe should inform more of our criminal justice system, and we hope it can be applied more broadly going forward. So this specific effort was a long time coming. It was part of the initial debate about Clean Slate, but was excluded from the original package. And a number of lawmakers saw how important it was and took it up. And since we've got Representative Yancey here, who had the centerpiece bill that passed, I'm going to pass it off to Josh to introduce her. Thanks, everybody.
Our next speaker is Representative Tenisha Yancey, who also sponsored this legislation going into effect just a few days ago. Representative Yancey is serving her third full term representing the 1st House District. Previously, Yancey served on the Michigan Competitiveness, Tax Policy, and Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. Representative Yancey graduated with a Bachelor of Applied Science degree from Eastern Michigan University and has done a lot of other work, including working in the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, where she worked as an assistant prosecuting attorney in the Juvenile Division. Welcome, Representative Yancey.
Good morning. Is it morning? It's afternoon now, but good afternoon. Thank you for having me. This legislation was definitely near and dear to my heart, not only because it gives people like me a second chance and sometimes a third. Well, this doesn't give people a third chance, but for me, I needed a third chance. As a young adult, I had 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors that I was unable to get expunged until this year. I am working on it actively now. And luckily for me, I was lucky, and I say lucky because it didn't hinder me from being able to get employment like some of these DUIs would absolutely hinder people from getting, especially certain types of employment. So I was lucky enough to still be able to obtain employment, obtain a law degree, obtain a law license, and actually practice as an assistant prosecuting attorney, and now serve in the House of Representatives as a state representative who make laws that affect and change people's lives. And this one is extremely important because it gives people that chance to and I believe John may have mentioned this, that most of these people have committed these offenses 25 years ago, and it's still lingering on their records, and it's preventing them from not only getting gainful employment or being able to be elevated in their, get promotions and promoted on their jobs. It also sometimes prevents people from being able to get housing and being able to provide for their families. And we should not be a state that holds people accountable for things that they did over 25 to 30 years ago, and continuously punishing them for mistakes that they made. This DUI package or bill package will only, or law now, thankfully it was signed into law. This will not apply to anyone who has, it's one and only, it's one time and only chances to get a DUI removed from your record, and it does not apply to anyone who may have caused injury or death or an accident, which was important to a lot of stakeholders. And just to bring, my testimony full circle, some of the things that caused me to make poor choices and decisions as a teenager and end up with a criminal record was because I lost my father to a drunk driver 5 days before my 14th birthday. And so this bill, these laws are extremely important to me. And not only because of who the challenges that I had, but also overcoming the fact that, and what was important in this, for the stakeholders to understand in this bill was that although it doesn't apply to people who cause injury or death, we also have to start addressing the fact that we need to make sure that we're getting the proper healing and the proper grieving, because there was a time that I would have been absolutely not in support of something like this because someone who killed my father was drinking and driving, and I would have, just wanted to throw in, like, I would have wanted to throw away the key, right? But it took a lot of growth and a lot of healing for me to understand that even if this person was eligible for a second chance, and he should be, maybe not through expungement bills or expungement laws, but he should be. And so it takes a lot for us to make sure that we are addressing more than just the punitive parts of our laws. We need to have, an overall arching criminal justice system that just isn't about seeking punitive damages or punitive consequences for people, and allowing them to be able to recover from their past mistakes.
Thanks so much, Representative Yancey. Our next speaker is Kamau Sandiford, who is our Clean Slate program manager. Kamau brings 6 years of experience as an expungement attorney at the Cooley Law School's Access to Justice Clinic in Grand Rapids. Kamau?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, John, and thank you, Representative Yancey, for just kind of giving us an overview of the statute and the strides that we've made in terms of even getting to this point where we have first-time DUI offenses now being able to be expunged. What I'd like to do is just to kind of get into some of the details as far as the new law is concerned. So I will start sharing my screen. I have a brief PowerPoint. It shouldn't take too long. I'll just kind of go over some of the key points that John and Representative Yancey mentioned. All right. So, the reason we're here today, obviously, is to kind of talk about the first-time DUI offenses that can now be expunged. This is a list of the excluded offenses under the law. As I believe Representative Yancey mentioned, any traffic offense involving injury or death is still excluded under the law. So even if you have a first-time DUI offense and it happens to have caused the injury or death, you still would not be able to get that expunged. Also, any traffic offense committed by a person with a CDL license or who's operating a commercial vehicle, that cannot be expunged. So theoretically, again, if you have a DUI offense and it involves a CDL license, you would be excluded from getting that expunged. All right, and that's just to kind of reiterate what Representative Yancey mentioned earlier. So now we're just going to touch on some of the key provisions of the new law. Obviously, the law went into effect a couple of days ago. It applies only to first-time violations. So some people may have multiple DUI offenses, a DUI second, a DUI third, which is treated as a felony. Those offenses cannot be expunged. A first violation DUI offense is not eligible for expungement if the individual has previously applied to have that DUI expunged. So a scenario would be, if that person had a previous DUI expunged in, let's say, in 2022, and then they tried to get another DUI expunged in 2024, that would not be an option. There is a 5-year wait period before you can file to have a first-time DUI expunged. And traditionally, 5 years has been the wait period for most offenses under the Clean Slate Act. They have changed wait periods, so there are 3-year wait periods for some misdemeanors, and then there are 7-year wait periods for multiple felony convictions. But as it relates to first-time DUI offenses, there is a 5-year wait period. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of focus on is the idea that the court can factor in the rehabilitative steps that you've taken, since the DUI happened. So this could mean regular AA attendance or any type of substance abuse program that you may have been involved in. You may, and I would strongly encourage you to submit that to the court when you are petitioning to have your first-time DUI offense expunged. Traditionally, the courts have always been able to look at somebody's post-conviction behavior, but specifically as it relates to these DUI petitions, you really want to focus on showing the court that this was truly an isolated incident and you have taken the necessary steps to basically reform your life. And so I think evidence of growth, obviously, and evidence showing that you've taken those rehabilitative steps would go a long way in terms of the petition being granted. One other thing to note, and I'm sure many of you guys may be aware of the fact that the automated expungement process is supposed to get up and running in 2023. This DUI, the first-time DUI provision only applies to, you have to apply to get that DUI expunged. So you would not be able to get it automatically expunged even when this DUI, even when the automated expungement process goes into effect next year. So if you want your first-time DUI offense to be expunged, you're going to have to apply. You're going to have to go through the court system to get that expunged. So you heard me mention first violation DUI offense. The question is, what is considered a first violation DUI offense? Per the statute, it's considered to be any violation committed by an individual who at the time of the offense did not have a prior DUI offense. Some people have asked, well, I have an OWVI or operating while visibly impaired offense. Is that also considered a DUI? Yes, per the statute, operating while visibly impaired offense would also fall within the definition of a DUI or an operating while intoxicated offense. The other slide that we have here is just to highlight the importance of identifying what is considered a first-time violation. So in this scenario, and sometimes you'll see this on a person's iChat, you may have somebody who has multiple DUI offenses, and for whatever reason, they may have pled down to a DUI first, even though it was their second offense, or they may have pled down to a DUI second, even though it was their third offense. So when we talk about first-time violations, we're literally talking about the first violation, the first DUI that you ever picked up, right? So in this scenario, the 06 DUI and the 2010 DUI would not be considered a first violation DUI offense because this person had prior DUIs at the time they committed the 06 and the 2010 DUIs as well. All right. And that is pretty much it as far as kind of getting into the details of the law. I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, John, will take questions if anybody has one.
Yes, that's correct. There are two questions so far. The first one is, where do we get the necessary forms? You might also want to just talk a little bit about the petition process, the different stages you go through, and things like that, just in case people don't understand how you go through the petition process.
Sure.
Kamau,
So,
that sounds like a good one for you.
Yeah, as far as the forms, the forms are readily available on Scale, which is the Supreme Court Administrative Office's website. I believe you can also get the forms from the AG's website as well. The Attorney General has a pretty helpful and useful expungement website, which allows you to get the appropriate form. Essentially, what would happen is you would fill out the application to set aside a conviction. You would have to get something called a certified record of the conviction. In this case, it would be a certified record of the DUI first that you received. You would have to go to the court that convicted you of that crime to get that DUI first offense. Once you've retrieved the certified record of conviction, there's fingerprinting that you also have to get. You can get that through the sheriff's office or police department. It's normally it's almost like a cardboard type of cutout that allows you to put your prints on that card. And that card is then submitted to the state police along with a copy of the application, a certified record of that conviction. And there is a $50 check or money order that has to be sent out to the state police. That is a fingerprint processing fee. Once that is mailed out to the state police, you also have to mail a copy to the Attorney General's office and the prosecutor that prosecuted you for that crime. And of course, the petition actually has to be filed with the convicting court itself. So whether your DUI case was in Kent County, in Wayne County, whatever county the DUI case originated from, that's where you would file the petition. Once you file, there'll be a hearing date that will be set by the court. And then prior to that hearing date, you will receive a response from the Attorney General's office and the Michigan State Police. And that the Attorney General's office will indicate whether or not you are in fact eligible for the expungement. You will also get a state police report, which is a printout of your criminal history. And that's how the judge knows, yes, you are in fact eligible, or no, you're not eligible for whatever reason. And then assuming everything comes back clear and you appear to be eligible, you will then go in front of the judge and kind of explain to the judge why you want the conviction expunged and why it's in the public interest to have this conviction expunged. And so I think I mentioned earlier in my presentation, about the importance of showing regular AA attendance, or anything that you've done since then to address the underlying issue with respect to alcohol or substance abuse. So that's kind of an overview of the process, Josh. Hopefully that answers that question.
John or Representative Yancey, do you have anything else to add? Or
I would only add to make sure you contact the county court or clerk's office of which you are applying. I have had a little different responses from different courts. Like Oakland County's process is slightly different than Wayne County's in terms of when you mail those things out or how you get a hearing date. You may not be able to get a hearing date on the front end in some counties, whereas some counties require you to have a hearing date before you mail out any of those documents.
Yeah, there's some local practice issues that are important to look at. Another one is fines and fees. There are judges that will grant expungements if you have outstanding fines and fees or restitutions, but there are jurisdictions where judges will deny if you're not totally paid up. So that's worth checking into. And yeah, I mean, the feedback we've heard from, people practicing in various places, that in most places, judges are looking to hear a story about how your life has changed since you got into trouble. So it's good to be prepared with that, especially with DUIs, where they're going to, as Kamau said, they're going to be looking for evidence of either alcohol cessation or treatment to bolster the case for an expungement. I think you're on mute, Josh.
The next question is, how are out-of-state applicants to navigate the required R-Waucedah fingerprint requirement and notarizing requirement on the applications without traveling to Michigan? I have no idea who's best.
You can get fingerprints done anywhere at any local law enforcement agency, and you can also get it notarized by any notary of where you are when you sign. So they'll notarize it based on your signature where you are, not where the court is.
And I will say to that point, the RI-8 card, that is Michigan specific, but you can also get the federal fingerprint card. It's called a FD258 card, and you can get that anywhere in the States, and you can get your fingerprints done, and Michigan State Police will accept that type of fingerprint card as well.
I was just going to say, I see sorry, Josh, to jump ahead, but I see a post from Judge Poer about local clinics. And Kamau, would you be willing to talk just a little bit about the work we've been doing to plan and support local clinics?
Yeah, so, for the best part of, well, even before, I've been here for the past 4 months, but even before then, Safe and Just, we were involved with supporting a number of expungement clinics throughout the state. Obviously, with this new law going into effect, we've gotten even more interest as far as establishing more expungement clinics around the state, especially ones that are centered around DUIs. And it's our hope to continue to do so with respect to these expungement clinics, just because they allow individuals to meet one-on-one with the attorneys and then have them, the attorneys help them fill out the appropriate forms. And then in some cases, we can partner them with a legal entity, whether that be legal aid or another legal entity that's willing to take their case on. And that would then mean having an attorney represent them at the hearing, so that they're not representing themselves at the hearing in front of the judge.
I should add, I mean, we have been partnering very closely with local legal aid organizations across the state. I don't know which one serves Adrian, but I think it's probably Legal Services of South Central Michigan. And they're great. And if you guys want to have a conversation with us and maybe their pro bono attorney, Sarah Monroe, I bet we could get something going Adrian, because we'd be happy to partner on something like that.
The
Thanks
next
for the
question.
clarification.
The next question is from someone who had a case in Jackson that happened 20 years ago, and they want to know if it'll be a Zoom meeting or will they have to go there in person if everything goes according to plan. I imagine that depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah, that would certainly depend on the jurisdiction. I will say more and more courts seem to be kind of transitioning to in-person hearings, but it's kind of hard to give that person a definitive answer. They would have to contact the court clerk to find out, whether or not they could appear via Zoom or in person for that particular hearing.
They also want to know, do they provide the RI-008 card at police departments?
So I can't speak for every police department in the state, but I know a number of them do have the cards themselves. There are private fingerprint vendors as well that do fingerprinting. So if for whatever reason the sheriff's office or the police department isn't an option, they can seek, to get fingerprinted through a private fingerprint vendor. It normally costs about $15 to $20 to get the fingerprinting done.
Hey, Josh, I think we should
Yeah, I just noticed that.
pause for Senator McBroom, who's been an advocate for this legislation for a couple years. I actually remember him making a fiery floor speech during the original Clean Slate legislation. But anyway, Josh, you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, Senator Ed McBroom serves the Upper Peninsula's 38th Senate District and is the caucus dean. Senator McBroom chairs the Senate Natural Resources and Oversight Committees, is a fourth-generation dairy farmer, and operates his family's 100-year farm. He previously served a full 3 terms in the State House of Representatives. Welcome to the webinar, Senator McBroom.
Oop, you're on.
I think you're muted.
Senator.
Sorry. Thanks very much for the introduction and for having me. I'm sorry if I'm jumping in at an inconvenient time for everyone. It just come on when they tell me to. I just got out of session and they said sign in, so here I am.
No, this is great. Your timing is excellent. And thank you for pushing this issue. We were just talking about how many people it's going to help.
I'm so excited that we got it done, and this is something that came across my desk numerous times while I was in the House too, with the opportunity to constituents calling me, losing their jobs, or unable to get promotions or seek out a new job that they really liked. And across the UP, we have, a struggle we need more log truck drivers. We need truck drivers in general. And that's one of the biggest impingements to people progressing with a CDL, is having one of these in their background. I was amazed to learn how widespread this problem was, just in the sense that I think everyone kind of thinks in the UP, drinking is a part of the culture, which, it certainly is a pastime for many. And not for me, I'm a teetotaler, so it's a little out there for me even to be supporting this legislation. But I knew it was something that could help a lot of the residents that I know. And I'm just so glad we got it done. It looked bleak there when we first had that first veto, but I give a lot of credit to Garland Gilchrist. I think you were having him on. Maybe he was already here, but Garland was somebody I went to first, because when we ran the first bill, I got this call from a guy who must have been 80 some years old in Detroit. And I was in my office. He called late at night. I answered the phone and he started telling me his story. And he asked, how can I help get this done? And I was like, if you would send a letter or make a call to Garland Gilchrist, like, that tall drink of water guy? And I was like, yeah, that's that's who it is. And he's like, I'll do that. I'll send him a letter, and I'm going to tell everybody else I know to send a letter. So the next day I went to Garland and I'm like, hey, by the way, I might have gotten you a little into something here, but he became a huge advocate on this issue himself, and real leadership in the executive branch to get this done. And a lot of thanks is owed to him.
Absolutely. He's been one of the leading advocates for second chance policies, and it's helped a lot of people. So Senator, just so you know, Safe and Just Michigan also is planning expungement clinics. And if you'd like to have one in your district,
That'd
let
be
us
great.
know. We'd be happy to help and try and plan that. We've got partnerships with legal aid organizations statewide and also a list of volunteer attorneys we're working on.
Well, thank you. I'll definitely try to make sure that we get you some information and find somebody to connect with. Either Marquette, Escanaba, or Iron Mountain is probably one of the best locations, but there's thousands of people everywhere I discovered, but in my district alone, you've got them who are, got a DWI when they were 22 or 23, they're 50 now. And this whole thing is just, not, what are we gaining for all of that? We're keeping people out of the workforce. We're keeping people from being able to support their families, pursue their dreams. And some of them even got tickets while they were parked in their driveway. I mean, they weren't even literally, they were just in the car keeping warm, and they still got the ticket. So I'm so glad that we're doing this. I wish we could have done more. I really didn't even want it to stop with just the one-time offense. I wanted to do more than that. But let's get this first bite of the apple down. Make sure in a couple of years that we haven't opened some terrible floodgates, and maybe we can come back for another bite.
That'd be great. Absolutely.
The next question we had was the OWI application for expungement is not updated on the website. I called the AG's office and was told to check the box under serious misdemeanor, even though OWI without injury isn't defined as such. Has anybody heard of any updated applications?
Yes, I just shared the link to the new scale form. I know some people were having difficulty clicking or opening the link. Hopefully it was. I think somebody just said that it works. So Josh, you're on mute again.
Is there anything else that anyone liked? That's the end of our questions. So if you all have anything you want to talk about.
I would just say one of the things that have come up at some of the fairs that we've done recently is people will come to these fairs thinking that by expunging the DUI offense, it will then lead to their license being restored. And that's one of the big things that I wanted to kind of emphasize as it relates to the DUI expungement. It doesn't necessarily impact your ability to get your license restored. There's a separate process through the Secretary of State that you would have to apply to have your license restored. So this would only impact as far as removing the conviction from your criminal record. It wouldn't necessarily remove it from your driving record. And that's one of the big things that have come up at these fairs that we've done recently.
Yeah, could I about that?
I'm sorry.
Yes, you can, Senator. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a really great point that Mr. Sandiford is pointing out here. We help a lot of our constituents with getting their license restored. It is, I'm almost hesitant to use the word, but it can be nightmarish. It's really difficult. In fact, I've been helping a guy who doesn't even live in Michigan anymore, and Michigan's still holding up his whole life. He lives in another state. He's had to clear his record in 5 different states, and Michigan has proven to be far away the most difficult state. So just want to encourage people as you work on this, you want to keep excellent records. You want to make sure you keep all your documentation, especially if you've been through any substance abuse treatment programs. And make sure when you send stuff to the Secretary of State, you have carefully filled out the forms, so you've made copies, you get receipts, you send it certified mail. It is really complicated. And if our office can be helpful, or if you want to talk to your own state senator, state rep, and if you can, get a lawyer. I mean, because it is a difficult and unwieldy process right now.
There are a few more questions that came up. Someone asked, how is the driver's license restoration process separate from the expungement process? I think Kamau talked about this a little bit, but if there's a little more detail to that.
Well, I would just say I'm not an expert on the driver's license restoration process. I know that's kind of a specified a specialty, and there are attorneys who handle license restoration cases. I know that the Secretary of State has a form, I believe it's on their website, or at least it used to be on their website, where you can fill out the appropriate information, and then there's a means through which you can submit the application. But again, I would advise anybody to obviously to consult with an attorney who practices and specializes with that type of law before filing that petition.
The next question is, are all DUIs causing injury totally excluded from the law?
Yes, under the current version of the law, if it's a traffic offense and it causes injury or death, then it would be excluded. So yes.
The next question is, I reached out to legal aid, but have yet to hear back from them on the next step on what to do. They assigned me an attorney and agreed I was a good candidate to move forward in the process. What can I do now?
Well, what I would say in defense of legal aid, I'm not sure which legal aid they're referring to, but I know they have a number of cases that they're trying to process and handle. So it might be a little while before they get to that person, but they can certainly reach out again to legal aid. I know if they're referring to, it looks like they're referring to Legal Services of South Central Michigan. I know that they do a number of expungement fairs, throughout the year. So perhaps they could try and go to one of those fairs to kind of speed up the process with their case.
I mean, it can sometimes take some time to get all the relevant documents together. There's certified records, the fingerprints, that's the sort of stuff that could happen while it's waiting to hear back from the attorney. It's good to have that stuff on hand.
The next question, are people who received minors in possessions able to get that taken from their record?
Yes. Yeah. And quite frankly, you can expunge an MIP even before this first DUI violation law went into effect. You could theoretically expunge an MIP. Now, if that MIP was related to you driving a vehicle at the time, that's where I think it would specifically apply to this new law. But if it's just a regular MIP that you picked up, yes, you can get that expunged.
So that again is all the questions that we have. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we sign off?
I would just encourage people to, as John mentioned, and I've mentioned before, we're doing a number of expungement clinics around the state, and we will try and promote those clinics as they come on stream. So I would encourage people to come out and just get screened to see if they qualify, and then we can hopefully help them go from there.
All right. Well, thank you to all the panelists and to the senator and the representative. Safe and Just Michigan thanks you for participating in today's event. We'll be hosting more webinars, so please keep an eye out for later in the year. On the screen, we have included several ways that you can keep in contact with Safe and Just Michigan, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks again for participating in today's panel.